Unfiltered podcast coming to you February 26, 2021. Yes, the dailies are back, man. We're doing back to the daily podcast, like back in the I want to say old days because it's only a couple of years ago. We only stopped doing this, I think, probably all over a year ago for many reasons, burnout, what it may be. And again, this podcast is Monday to Friday mostly. It doesn't mean I'm going to commit to that every day, but for the most part, that is the goal. I'm in a better place now to do this. Number one, I'm energized, especially about Earnestly Speaking Media, as we go through the rebrand right now. Right now, we have 3 active shows, podcasts under this brand. Of course, all hosted by me. Different things. We have Earnestly Podcast, which is, right now, we're now in our 10th year. Of that show. We have, of course, this podcast, Unfiltered, and we have Take 3 Wrestling, my wrestling podcast with my co-hosts Mike and Joe, Mike Bernier, Joe Lopez. And then, of course, we're bringing back soon, relaunching the podcast with my wife, Lauren, the That's So Christian podcast. And hopefully we get that going in the next couple weeks, or we'll see what happens. That could be a weekly, a monthly, or bi-weekly podcast. We'll see what happens. But this one, of course, I'm really excited about because when I started at Earnestly Media back in 2017, this is the show that really was probably the most enjoyable because it was just me being able to just sit and react to the stories, to things in the world of sports mainly, and in pop culture and whatever, even a little bit of politics, a little bit of whatever it may be. And be able to react to things that I saw fit in the moment. And especially these things that, that doesn't have much legs. Like, there's a story about something, but it's in the know. It's in the now. And now I can be able to react to it again. In Earthquake Podcast, it was a little more bi-weekly. It's more long form and... Not bi-weekly, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. We do that once or twice a week. More long form. So some stories I would like to get to talk about, I don't get to if the next show's planned days in advance. So this is what this podcast comes in. So this podcast is definitely more short form. Earthly Podcast is long form. So there's a difference between the two shows. Anyway, again, this podcast, like all the podcasts on Earthly Media, you can find on any podcast catcher, on Amazon Music, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, all that good stuff. So we got a couple things to talk about. And like I said, this podcast, every episode, we try to go between 10 and 15 minutes. By the way, I just finished the latest episode of WandaVision. Just word advice. No spoilers, of course. I'm not going to get into spoilers here, but word advice. If you're going to watch WandaVision tonight, if you haven't watched it yet, make sure, once again, like last week, you watch the end credits. The end credits are very important. So just make sure you watch that. I will say I was a little confused this episode. Maybe down the road I'll write about the show because there's 1 more week left in the show. And I think also after next week, I think the Falcon and his series starts right after WandaVision's first season is complete. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, we got a lot of things I want to touch on today. And I mentioned Earthquake Podcast a little while ago. And the reason I mentioned Earthquake Podcast a little while ago was because last night, I did a podcast interview with our old friend Antoine Staley. By the way, great conversation about a lot of things. Every time he's on the podcast, we will go across the board and anything. We can talk basketball, we can talk hockey, we can talk football, we can talk wrestling, we can talk anything, hip hop, you name it. He was on the podcast last night, and we did a good portion of the show talking about the off season. I want to kind of get into that a little bit here on this show today. Talk about the potential quarterback carousel that may happen this off season. We're already there. Free agency starts in a few weeks. A lot of quarterbacks, a lot of big name quarterbacks, whether it be older quarterbacks like Big Ben Roethlisberger or Drew Brees, they may or may not retire. Or you got quarterbacks like Cam Newton, who's right now in limbo about his future. You got quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks like Russell Wilson that all of a sudden has been in not trade talks, but there's some rumblings about things and whatnot, whether his future in Seattle is murky. Obviously, Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston. We know that already. Dak Prescott, what's going to happen with him and his situation in Dallas, and will the Cowboys franchise him again? Will they give him a long-term deal? There's still reports saying that they're still far apart on terms of where they're at in terms of a long-term deal. It's a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on this year, this offseason right now. We look forward to. You already have Matthew Stafford and him getting traded to the Rams for a swap for Jared Goff. So it's a lot of things to talk about. I've never seen an offseason. I've been an NFL fan now over 30 years. This is the first offseason we have so many quarterbacks, whether or not they're elite quarterbacks, middle of the road quarterbacks, or quarterbacks on the last legs, getting so much attention, and so much question marks about their future. It's going to be a really interesting March when free agency starts. We heard, obviously Deshaun Watson already said that he reiterated yesterday that he wants to leave Houston. Houston keeps saying they're not going to trade him. Then again, it's also February. The draft is still over 2 months away. So all that is nonsense in my opinion. He's going to get traded. There's no doubt about that. He's going to get traded. But it's an interesting offseason right now. And it's going to get even more interesting as we move forward. There's so many questions. There's just so many questions about the future of so many people. And the quarterback, of course, being the most important position in all sports. The biggest spotlight is the quarterback. What's going to happen? Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson probably, Big Ben, Roethlisberger, Deshaun Watson. Carson Wentz got traded to Indy. That's another quarterback story that has been fluid so far. Russell Wilson, I think in the case of Russell Wilson, for example, I said on the podcast last night, Earthquake Podcast, check it out, of course, on all podcast catchers, as I said. Wow, I can't talk today. But my opinion still stands. I don't think he'll get traded. But I think this situation is fluid for the next 12 months. Because I think Russell Wilson's future in Seattle is going to rely heavy on how this next season goes. Because if Seattle does not improve, if Seattle's another one and done in the playoffs like they were this year, losing to the Rams in the wild card round, or worse, missing the playoffs, and Russell Wilson right now in the peak of his prime, right now, and with, the rumblings, quote unquote, and again, it was a quote, the rumblings, there's always something there because Russell Wilson, this whole stemmed from an interview he did with Dan Patrick back a couple weeks ago, and basically saying that he would like more input on the process of, personnel decisions and whatnot. And I think, Antoine and I disagree on that. He thinks, Antoine was on the podcast, he said that he thinks that he should have input. I disagree. I think he should have some input. Not saying all of it, but some input. I don't think he'll get traded. I think he'll be the starting quarterback for the Seahawks week 1. But I think this is a fluid situation that has already gained legs in the last 2 weeks and can gain more legs between now and the end of next year. So it's something to look forward to. I think this is a big year for Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Because this could be his last year in Seattle if he really wants to get out of there. I'm sure he's interested in see what's out there. He's seen Tom Brady win another ring. I'm sure Russell Wilson's interested to tighten things up in Seattle or to make a move somewhere else. Believe me, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. You know how many teams will take him in a heartbeat? Just like Deshaun Watson, same thing. Maybe more so because while he's a little older, he's still, top 5 in the league. Great guy, marketable, you name it. So it's a lot to look forward to here. Big Ben Roethlisberger, what's he going to do? Take a pay cut. He should take a pay cut. I don't think he'll retire. As I said in the podcast last night, I think the move for the Steelers here is just to find out who their next guy is. They don't have the guy. Their next guy isn't on the roster. They got to draft somebody or trade with somebody or acquire somebody. So the best move for the Steelers, of course, is to stick with Big Ben another year because even though he's no longer an elite guy, he's still okay. He'll still get you 9-10 wins in a season. And maybe if you get lucky and get a break in the AFC playoffs, maybe you can get a break, get into the title game, maybe in the Super Bowl. We know. Who knows? Deshaun Watson, he'll get traded. I'm not even worried about that. Cam Newton, where's he going to go? So many question marks right now this offseason in terms of quarterbacks. I can't wait till free agency starts. Can't wait. Cannot wait at all. So, that's that. All right. What else on the docket? Some wrestling here. Talking real quick. Ric Flair turned 72 years old yesterday. 72 years young. Ric Flair has to be on the Mount Rushmore all time wrestlers, right? He's got to be in the Mount Rushmore. I mean, I wouldn't put him on the WWE Mount Rushmore, although because they, obviously have the rights to WCW, you have to kind of consider that. But it's kind of funny seeing Ric Flair today. He's still involved. Like right now, he's in the angle with his daughter Charlotte and Lacey Evans and all that. I mean, it's kind of a weird angle, but Ric Flair's one of the greats. We almost lost him a couple years ago. He's still with us. And we're grateful. I'm grateful that he's still with us. He's still somewhat involved in the business. Still, even though he's not a wrestler anymore, he's still involved in some ways. Making cameo spots where it may be. And look, the more we have Ric Flair in our lives, the better. I'm excited about it. Really am. So, happy birthday to Ric Flair, who turned 72 yesterday, and still, breaking hearts. In a good way, of course. In a good way, Limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing. Come on now. The man, the GOAT, Ric Flair. How about this news that dropped on Wednesday that shocked the hell out of me and everybody else? I didn't see this coming. How about Paul White, also known as The Big Show in WWE, also known as The Giant in WCW? I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame yet, but he's certainly in the Hall of Fame at some point. Although now I wonder if it's going to be delayed because of this decision he's made to go to AEW. Paul White, Big Show, is now part of the AEW roster. Excuse me. He will be doing commentary on the new AEW Dark Elevation show. And word is also on top of that, he'll be also doing some in-ring work with the company. I actually like this move. Paul White is 49 years old. He still has some in the tank. We've seen him in the ring recently. He's not horrible. He can get guys over. While I've been critical of AEW recently, some of my interest in AEW recently have been waning. And there's so many legends and older guys, that are there to get guys over, but it's kind of a little over. It feels a little bloated. I think this move, because Paul White's still a somewhat active guy, still well known. He has his own Netflix show on top of that. Although I'm not even sure they got renewed for more than one season. I didn't watch it, and I heard it was horrible. That the big show, whatever the hell it is called, I can't remember. Netflix, but this move makes sense. It feels like it makes sense. I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. And I think, look, I'm not saying he should or shouldn't be in the main event picture. All I can tell you, I think if you utilize him the right way, you can make it make sense and write him properly. The problem is the AEW writers, they're hit or miss. And I know Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and Tony Khan, of course, are all the main creative, and I have questions there, of course, but I do think this can work. This makes sense. Paul White has a little more in the tank. Look, if Undertaker can still go, even on a part-time basis, in his mid-50s, mid-late 50s, then why couldn't Paul White, who's still pretty active now? Just saying. So, what else? Before I go, last thing here. Saw this thing on the news yesterday about Mr. Potato Head and the future Mr. Potato Heads moving forward are now going to be gender neutral. I'm so sick of this shit, man. I'm sick of all this gender. Look, I'm not gonna. I don't want to insult people and all that. This is just my opinion. When you're born, there's two genders. Either you're a male or you're a female. Okay? To me, I think Mr. Potato Head, this whole company, whatever they do, Hasbro, that's what the company is. They are doing this for two reasons. To troll people, number one, because they know it's going to trigger people by saying this. They know this. They're not stupid. Okay? And furthermore, this is to also create more sales. by having a female, well, not female, but having a gender neutral, Mr. Potato Head, whatever. They know it's going to generate some interest. Whether or not people agree, disagree with it, or are angry about it, the interest is still going to be there. And look, there's an old saying, sometimes bad press is good press. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes bad press is good press. And I can see this working out really in Hasbro's favor. I really can. So, I don't know. I'm just annoyed about the whole political correctness and all that. I support a lot of liberal-leaning progressive causes and all that. This is not one I really think it's worth wasting time on, honestly. To me, this is annoying more than anything else. So, I don't know. It is silly stuff there. So, anyway, that's going to do it. That's about 60 minutes of this podcast. And we'll get back next Monday. Okay, so we'll talk soon. On Twitter, EJChristian7, Ernest Speaking Media, and ErnestSpeaking.net. Check out all the podcasts on the network. And have a good weekend, guys. Love you guys. Take care. Stay up. See ya.